Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today.
My clock just ticked 8:15, and who should appear? Pete Wakefield.
How the hell are you, my good man?
Mate, I'm a lot better for seeing you. See, you get away with it. You don't need to have one of these because you don't look like a thumb without hair. You look like a thumb without hair.
You look like a thumb, mate. I'm something in between a cancer patient and Deadpool. I'm somewhere in between that. But I'm the Ryan Reynolds, but not the handsome version. I'm the one with the makeup on. It's not gone well, but you're looking well, brother. How's the family?
Mrs. is good. She's just finished a swing of nights. She's a nurse, so she's doing well. The dogs are good. I think mum and dad are all right. Spoke to them last week. They're doing well. Everything's going pretty good. What about your situation, mate? How are you doing?
I always think if you're in a citadel is crumbling, nothing else is working. Do you know what I mean? So I'm, in fact, I think there's layers to that. We'll go there first. So your inner citadel is here. You know, nothing. You've got to stand guard at the fortress of that mind first and foremost, always, because that's all you can control. You think about your sphere of control, your sphere of influence. Sphere of control finishes at your ears. Do you know what I mean? My thoughts, my actions. That is it. And then beyond that, yeah, I can have an influence on my daughter, on my missus, on my ex-wife, on my parents, on my family. But I think people around you, they don't learn, they absorb. So I think before you can give anything to anyone else, you've got to give it to yourself first. So try and give myself kindness and compassion, which is hard for people like us because we constantly have unrealistic expectations of ourselves. We're very, very hard on ourselves. We're very self-deprecating. You piece of shit, you hypocrite, you know, all of that sort of stuff. So that helps. I think if you broadcasted the way you talk to yourself, you'd be in an insane asylum. You'd never talk to anyone else the way you talk to yourself. It's horrible at times, isn't it?
Oh, I love it.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Gore-Tex Professional Fabrics. Now, we all know the working environment of a firefighter is filled with challenges. We face serious risks on the job, such as heat exhaustion, burns, physical and mental stress, and we frequently come into contact with high levels of toxic chemicals. Now, I have been wearing Gore-Tex for nearly 2 decades on the front line, working in hostile environments, tackling challenging incidents from firefighting to water incidents and in urban search and rescue environments. Gore-Tex have a well-earned reputation for protecting professionals in the fire and emergency services through their family of highly innovative, waterproof, breathable moisture barriers that exceeds global performance standards and are trusted worldwide. Gore-Tex, going further together.
I was talking with a couple of the people I'm on my officer's course with the other day, and we're really hard on ourselves. So the way we do officers, it's a really competitive process. You have to pass a written exam, a verbal interview that's kind of a verbal exam, as well as what we call a yard exam, so a mock incident. And they take the highest in an order of merit. And we had 121 applicants for 40 spots. So you've got like some really, really high achieving people. Like in general, firefighters are high achievers because it's a tough process to get into, right? Like, I know we get 5,000 applicants.
We'll unpick that in a little bit, but I'll let you have it for now.
We'll get there. But, you know, like, we still work on the order of merit, so the highest scores across the board. And,
really?
You know, we have 5,000 applicants. So you've got, like, some really energized, motivated people. And we were doing presentations. And because we're a group of pretty passionate, motivated people, everyone was like, oh, we don't just need to pass this, we need to crush it. Even though it's a competency-based assessment and everyone's going to get the same mark, we want to know in our minds and minds that we were the best. And everyone was being real hard on themselves. And we're sitting there like, imagine talking to someone else the way you talk to yourself in your head. You just wouldn't.
I try and do it. I try and dilute it slightly the way that I talk to my daughter, but she's getting really good. Yeah. And for me, with my daughter, the most important thing I want to develop in her is self-confidence and resiliency. You know, yes, she's empathetic. She's a very good person. The questions that she asks, because I've always said, like, ask better questions. Just everything in life. I mean, podcasting's an easy example, but like, if you say, "Oh, you know, Gerard, why did I fail the recent exam?" Your mind will go, "Because you're a piece of shit. Because you don't really know anything. Because everyone knows you're a fraud," or whatever. Life rewards the specific ask and ignores the vague wish. You ask better questions, you'll get better answers. If you said, "What about the first 3 questions of that exam could I have done better?" Your mind is a constant great problem solving machine, isn't it? It will give you a better answer. But I think we don't ask ourselves good questions. So to circle back to it, my daughter asks great questions, but I want to give her that self-confidence and resiliency. So I do hold her accountable a little bit harder than perhaps I do my missus or my ex or anything like that, because I'm willing to risk our relationship on you becoming a better person. You know, I never want her to turn around to me and go, "Daddy, I wish you'd have pushed me harder. I wish you'd have held me accountable a bit more. I wish you'd have made me do that." You know, when she's looking at her friends at whatever age and going, "Oh, so-and-so's just got in here, or so-and-so's just got in there. How come you never pushed me to do that?" And it's not inherently just about like avoiding that responsibility from me and saying, "Oh no, it's your fault. I gave you opportunity. You just fucked it up." You know, I'm not looking for that, but I want to push that relationship right on the fringe, which is stressful at times, you know, and I do struggle to make myself chill out and just, you know, but the thing is, I'm so, and I don't know if it's a thing about our profession, I'm so familiar with my mortality. This will end, maybe far sooner than you think.
Yep. What's his name? Ryan Holiday. Ryan Holiday was talking about it. I was watching TED Talks like I do usually. I don't know. Anyway, I was watching Ryan Holiday's TED Talk. He's the Daily Stoic. And he opens his TED Talk with, "I've got a stat for you that you have to believe. 100% of you in this room will die. And 100% of your children will die. And 100% of your parents will die. And 100% of people die. So you have to be conscious of that fact, memento mori, and understand that you have to live like you are going to die. Today is your last day. Or you've already died, now live life," kind of thing. But circling back to what you were saying about building resiliency, and again, to get really philosophical, and that this is a point I wanted to talk about later, was, you've heard Socrates, yeah? I can't teach anybody anything, I can only teach them how to think. So you as a father, you can't teach your daughter not to make mistakes. You can't teach your daughter not to do dumb things. Our parents couldn't teach us how to do dumb things, how not to do dumb things. Because we did them. They said, "Don't do that." We did them anyway, but they gave us the tools and the skills to be resilient.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they built us as people, or there's been influences in your life that have built you to be 100%. A resilient go-getter, and you want to pass that on. And that's all you've got to do. You don't teach them what to think, you teach them how to think. How to think through the problem.
How to think. Yeah, because I always think I communicate, and the podcast is an example of it. It's kind of how the Bible is written, even though I'm not remotely religious, but like I communicate through analogies and through stories and through concepts. And I don't get too into the micro of making it too specific, because like you say, it is all a way of thinking. Like one of the things I always say to my daughter, shy kids don't get sweets. You know, like go and ask. What's the worst thing they'll say? Gerard will say, "Oh, fuck off, you cheeky bastard." Do you know what I mean? Okay, nobody died. Yeah? Just say to him, "Can I have a go? Oh, have you got a spare one of them? You know, how much is that?
Yeah.
Or would you be all right if I give you £2? What are they going to say? They might just say no. That's okay.
So scared of no.
Doesn't matter.
Everyone's so scared of no. I don't get why we're scared of no. Nothing changes. Yeah. It's all good. You know, I'm dead anyway. You're dead anyway.
They say, I think Ryan Holiday talks about it a lot. A man has 2 lives, and the second one starts when he only realizes he's got one.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? When you go, "Oh, this is going to end soon." You know, I've just pulled that 14-year-old out of that car. Oh, I bet they thought they had 70 years as well.
I talk about this often because I get people outside of the job ask me like how you do it and how you deal with death and all that kind of stuff. And we see a bit of it because we also do medical with we call it emergency response, emergency medical response, and it's a program that we run with our version of NHS where we respond to not conscious, not breathing. So we go to all heart attacks, suicides, strokes, all that kind of stuff. So anything that is pretty serious, we head to. So
Did you get an uplift on that? How long's that been the case? Just to zoom in on that for a second, because that's what I'd love to the UK to move to.
Yeah, 20 years for us, I think, nearly. Mm-hmm. Don't quote me. Someone will watch this and message me and say it's actually been 17 or something.
Don't worry about it.
Anyway, so they were asking me how I deal with this, right? And everyone other than the suicides, and I don't begrudge people who commit suicide. Like, I don't know what it's like to. We'll get to that, but like, it must be so sad that that's the only way out, and that's your release. That's what you do. But everyone else, they woke up that morning. They didn't think they were going that day. Do you know what I mean? Like, no one thought they were going to get hit by the car. No one thought they were going to have a cardiac arrest. No one thought that they were. This is it for me. And for me, when I go to these kind of events, it really centers me and makes me realize that, yeah, I've got one life. So, go be the best you can be. Be kind to yourself, but be the best you can be. Go strive to work hard in the gym, strive to work hard in your job, strive to work hard in your relationships, strive to work hard on yourself, on your hobbies. But just understand that you are mortal and you only get one shot, so make it count.
100%. There's so many things I want to double click on there. One of them, just for a second, is what SIDS is? Sudden infant death syndrome.
Yeah, sudden infant death, yeah.
Yeah, and there's SADS as well, sudden adult death syndrome. Basically, where people go to bed and they don't wake up, and they can't really understand why, what it's for, and all that sort of stuff. A friend of mine, his son, passed from SIDS when he was about 8. It's only a little while ago, maybe 5 or 6 months ago. And since then, and I don't know if it was Ryan Holiday again, but it was someone I heard it from. And he's like, when they're putting their kids to bed, quietly in their own mind, and I do this now, and it might seem a bit morbid to people, I look at my daughter and I think, you might die tonight. And I don't fall over in the corner and start crying. I use it as a moment to be where my feet are, to be in the present and really look her in the eye and give her a big kiss. And I also do it like, before I walk in the house, I think to myself, how would the best dad in the world walk in the house right now? And just for clarity, I am most definitely not the best dad in the world. I'm not even in the top 10. Probably not even the top 1,000. But it's like, how would he walk in now? Because my daughter, and our children don't want a lot of our time. They want a lot of our attention. So like, if I can give her a massive amount of my attention, like 98%, for 3 or 4 minutes when I walk through the door, that's what she'll remember. That's what she'll feel. Did daddy walk in and go, oh, no, I'm really busy, I need to get my laptop? Did he walk in with 27 bags over his shoulders and go, no, I've clearly got my hands full, haven't I? Stupid. Come on, let's think about it. So, yeah, I always have that moment when I pull up in the car and just think, okay, all of the shit that's in my head at the minute from work, that doesn't belong inside with my family. So I'm going to leave that here in the car. And when I come back out in the morning, if it's still here, I'll pick it up and I'll deal with it. But it does not belong in there with my family. And it's a trick, I'm not going to pretend that I don't then go inside and things still flash up and I go, oh, my phone's gone off and all that bollocks. But it helps to reframing. And I just think how, I go bang, go in, drop a knee, give her a cuddle, look her in the eye. Oh, yeah, wow, yeah. 40 seconds, 50 seconds, 3 minutes, whatever. And then she's like, oh, Daddy, Layla's ringing. I'm going to go and speak to her. Oh, Daddy, I'm just going to go back in the lounge and do this. Okay. And then I can unpack the car and I can do whatever else. But stuff like that. And again, I fuck it up regularly. I'm not pretending I'm perfect by any stretch of the imagination.
People will never remember how good you were at a task, right? Like, no one's going to think of me and go, oh, he was the best at pulling a hose off the truck. They don't care. They care about how you interact with them.
It's a Maya Angelou quote. Do you know it? They'll forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they always remember how you made them feel.
Beautiful. When I started instructing for my service, I was probably pretty egotistical, and I probably wanted to go out and prove that I was just this amazing firefighter. And it wasn't about the student, it was about me and my ego. And I slowly learned a couple of things, and one of them was people weren't responding to that at all, and they weren't liking it, and you were, hammering into them, and you were just being mean, and you were like, why aren't you at my standard, rah, rah. And so I had a shift, and I started thinking, and someone said that to me, people don't remember how good you were, they remember how you treated them. So I changed my approach, and from changing my approach, I saw better results, but I also felt better. I had better connections. I got more reward out of it because it wasn't about me, it was about the student and getting my message through to them. And I speak about this a lot because a lot of people want to go be instructors, and they want to teach because either they're passionate, there's probably a little bit of ego in there, whatever it is. And they want to go out there and prove that they're this great person. And they go out there and they teach like they were instructed, which is pretty harsh, pretty hardcore, not really connecting with the student. And I was in the US and I said to me, mate, wouldn't it be different if we took a coach's approach to instructing? Not an instructor's approach. So you think about teaching people CrossFit or strongman or fitness, right? You don't go in and go, hey, look at me. Look what I can do. Do that. No, do that. You actually connect with them. You go, okay, look, we need to move this here, this here, explain this.
Meet them where they are.
Here. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then you're not focused on getting them to be, going up against Eddie Hall. You're focused on getting them to be better than they were moments before. That's it. You're not comparing them to anybody else, just taking them on that little bit of a journey.
100%. This episode is brought to you in partnership with MSA Safety. Today we have them to thank for the improved firefighter safety through connectivity in their brand new connected firefighter system. At the center of the connected firefighter platform is the MSA M1 SCBA with telemetry. That integrates straight in with the Luna system, which is a wireless all-in-one device creating an independent search and rescue network, providing edge detection, enhanced personal thermal imaging, while simplifying post-scene reporting and data retention. All of this then plugs into the FireGrid system for cloud-based connectivity, real-time information, and data-driven decisions for the incident commander. MSA are truly taking massive strides in the future of improved firefighter safety through connectivity in the brand new MSA Connected Firefighter platform. Now back to the show. So I know we've already got into it, brother, but we're going to go in a million directions today because I love it. So you and I have been, so just for context for people listening, obviously I had you on the podcast before.
Yep.
We've developed quite an intense bromance over the past many months, and we message each other on a regular basis. Some challenges I'm facing in my personal life, some challenges I face at work, and you've equally shared some similar challenges in different capacities. What I wanted us to do today is we're going to go through some of our favorite sort of quotes, thoughts, and try and apply these to the context of our life, but also to the world of firefighting, fire departments, fire and rescue services globally. People that may be showing up for some very specifics on fire behavior may or may not be disappointed, but equally for me, the things that you've been able to achieve and the places you've gone and the people that you speak to, you are not the best instructor in the world. You are not the best firefighter in the world. Neither am I. But for people that aspire to have a different type of career or approach their work in a different sort of mindset, we thought it would be fun to go through some of the guiding principles or thoughts or things that we have in the back of our minds that kind of help us work our way through our day-to-day life and kind of use as a bit of a moral compass in how we kind of conduct ourselves, perhaps. So that's the impossible challenge. I've got a myriad of things for us to go through. What I want to do is go through these and throw them on the table between us, and then ask for your thoughts and reflections. Some of these will mean nothing to either of us or to you or to me. There's certainly a lot of them will mean something to me because these are some that I've sort of prepared and put together. And that's going to be the challenge. Shall we go for it?
Let's go, bro. Let's do this.
So the first one, it's one of my favorites, something we share on the podcast a lot. Don't spend time trying to recruit disinterested people. Bees don't waste time trying to convince flies that honey is better than shit. talk to me about, we have a big desire for diversity. We have a big desire to encourage people that perhaps this is not their core aspiration, and we can have a habit of nursing disinterested people through our training departments. Give me the for and against, how much you think needs to come from the person and how much comes from the service and the instructors and the firefighters.
Question that I like to ask recruits when we start is like, this is a really personal question I'm going to ask you guys. I want you to shut your eyes. And I don't want to know the answer, but I want you to really think about this. And I want you to picture a firefighter. Was that firefighter you? If not, we have work to do. Because if you can't picture if you don't shut your eyes and think, when you think of a firefighter, you think of yourself, you know you're not a firefighter. That's the long and short of it.
Yeah, if it doesn't say that to yourself, like when you dream, I don't dream of Gerard scoring the fucking touchdown. I don't dream about him winning the next CrossFit competition. It's me. You never dream about yourself on the bench, do you?
No.
You're dreaming about you in the thing. So if you can't see yourself in that position, then there's a whole many layers of something going on there.
Yeah, and then I tell them, like, this job, I've been doing it since April 2012. This job has taken a part of me. It is like as a career, I've been doing it since April 2012, and this job has taken a part of me, and I will never get that part back. And if you're just here for a laugh, if you're just here because you thought it was a good idea, if you're here because you wanted a second job that seemed pretty easy, that paid pretty well, you're probably trading a lot more than you think you're trading to get it, and you're going to be a liability to everybody in it. And I think we, as fire rescue services around the world, one, we're having trouble attracting people now. I hear in America that it's really hard to find new recruits at times in certain places in the country. I know that you guys in the UK are doing the same thing. We're still getting pretty good applications, but at the same time, you got to think why do you want to do it, and what it is you're doing. Like, check your moral compass against what you expect a firefighter to do for your family. Because you can sit here and preach, oh, we've got to be safe and we've got to do this and we've got to do that. What if it's your family in there? What if it's your daughter in that house? What if it's your mother, your brother, your sister, your partner? How good do you want that team to be? And will you ever be that good? Are you interested enough to be that good? Because if you're not interested enough to be that good, man, there's a few other people that would like your job. I think that interest in the fire brigade is, like, you don't have to love it. Like, I love it, and it's all I ever wanted to do. Like, look, I've got a brass helmet right here. You know, I collect memorabilia. I go overseas just to go check out fire conferences. I love it. You don't have to be on my level, but when you turn up to work, you have to be 100 in. You don't turn up to work and be half in. Don't turn up to work and be this. And I'm not saying that it has to be every day you have to give you 100, but give you 100 of what you can every day. Does that make sense to you, Pete? Like, you know, we've got people that turn up, they might not be in a good place, stuff might be going on. And if you're at your 70, give me your 70, but give me everything you got every time you turn up. And it's not that hard to turn up and get a little better every day. And it doesn't have to be that we're training or we're drilling from moment we walk in the watch, moment we walk out of the watch. But we want to, you know, we want to do some work, we want to have some play, we want to eat a meal, we want to do our duties. That's it.
Because also it's the manner in which you do all of them as well. You know, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So, you know, last night, I was on shift last night, and so the lads had listened to an episode with Lars that I did a little while ago. Lars Axelsson, the Swedish fire nerd, for people that don't know. And actually, when we looked through the YouTube, saw you on there again, because they said, oh, I really, really enjoyed that episode. And I was like, well, he's got a whole bunch more stuff, and some of them are just lectures. Not just lectures, but they're lectures. They're not an interactive conversation. And So let's go through one of them, and we'll go through the concepts of it and sort of stuff like this. Now, before we come on shift last night, the lads were on the WhatsApp group saying, oh, shall we get a takeaway tonight? Because over here in the UK, it's Friday night last night. And I was like, yep, sure, happy to do that and whatever. And we sat down to look at one of Lars's things, and it was an hour and 15 minutes long. Now, it was already 9:30 by this point. Now, that's fine. We can drill till whenever. And this isn't, because we'd already done some drill. And I said to them, I'm a big fan of well-rested firefighters, because sleep and recovery and all this sort of stuff is very important to me. So I'm not as much as people might think I would be. I'm not a let's wake everyone up and put a ladder up at 2 a.m. It's a fucking stupid idea. Let's be intentional about what we're doing. But anyway, it was getting late, and I said we'll stick this on and we'll skip through a few bits and we'll discuss some of the elements of it. It was past midnight by the time we finished, because we paused stuff, and then one of the new recruits there, they were talking about wind-driven fires, and then we went downstairs and got the little model of the high-rise thing, and we started going through some wind-driven and some blowtorch effect, which led on to compartmentation and all this sort of jazz, and then we went into smoke curtains, and it all just starts to snowball, doesn't it? And you get into all this different stuff. And I said to them, about 10:30, after we'd been doing it for an hour or so, I said, do you want to order yourself some food? Because whatever. And they were like, yeah, I'll just do it on the phone quickly, but I want to keep doing this. So the point I'm making from all of that is we were still having fun. We had a takeaway together. We had some great food. It was a very relaxed environment. We weren't running around a drill yard in fire kit. We were going through concepts. We were drawing on whiteboards. We were getting little models out. We were demonstrating the Coanda effect with some running water and a glass and a candle that was in the appliance bay. We were doing all of these little things. They're not difficult. It's just tinkering. It's just are you interested? And that's what I want. It's not, if some station manager that doesn't understand or has a different concept of training says, oh, check the cameras, didn't see you guys out in the yard last night. No, we did some, well, can you write down exactly what sort of training you did? We did fire behaviour training. Yeah, but because this is about, like, when I always think about this when I'm instructing, I may have a semi-prescriptive framework in my head about what we're going to cover in this next hour, but I want to go where the student needs me. If there's no point me going, right, today we're going to talk about the physics of pressure and hydraulics and how those two relate. If I've just said two words you don't understand, this is what we said before about starting where you are. There's no point me starting halfway through the fog and then just shouting at you and saying, I'm over here. I don't know where the fuck you are. You've started at point number 7. I need you to come back to point number 2 and then take me to 7, and then we can go to 14 and 18 and 25. But otherwise, people just nod along, don't they? And you're like, I lost you 5 minutes in, and there's no point us carrying on now. You're just being polite because you think I should know. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, it's a very, very difficult framework for people to get their head around. But anyway, we digress down that rabbit hole. We sat and did that thing with Lars.
Yeah. Circling back to it, though, I want to touch on a couple of points there. Andy Fredericks, you ever heard of Andy Fredericks? He was Squad 18, FDMY, died in 9/11, he's an amazing teacher. And they put together a book, I think you can download a PDF too, called The Book of Andy. And Andy was an FDMY engine guy. He was an instructor all around America. He's got some great, like, one-liners, sayings. Him and Paul Grimwood actually used to write letters to the editor arguing with each other, it's quite interesting to read. But, like, it's a real look back into that history of that straight stream versus that fog and all that kind of stuff. Andy says, education is entertainment with a purpose. Now, you look at Lars, you look at Johnny McDonough, you look at any great instructor, what are they? One, they know their shit. But two, they're the most entertaining people to listen to. Like, I caught up with John and Carol a weekend or two ago, went up to Sydney, catch up with them. And both John and Carol, I could listen to them teach me how to change a tyre on a car because they're just that entertaining and engaging, right? And then number two, you build a culture. You build a culture at your fire in your watch that you want to be a part of, right? You want to be that bloody excited to go to work and just sit there talking about stuff. I was in Chicago, and while I was in Chicago, I did a couple of ride-alongs. One thing I noticed about the Chicago Fire Department that I loved was that they'd changed shifts, and the shift that was coming on was talking about the last shift's fire. Like, oh, did you see the fire they had down on 117th Street? What would we have done? What did they do? Why'd they do that? Oh yeah, that's real smart. Hey, did they think about doing this? What was stopping them here? And like, it was just such an excited culture to talk about fire. Like, so you guys watched Lars's video, and then what did you do? Let's go talk about all the stuff in Lars's video, and let's go play with it and understand it.
No one was watching the clock. No one was going, fucking hell, how much longer? And I said it on several occasions. You know, we paused, we discussed the thing, and I said, should we knock it on the head there, or do you want to do a bit more? And everyone was like, no, let's go, let's do some more, you know. And yeah, I give them that out constantly. I'm not that, you know, I'm not that guy, but yeah, it's just because I almost wanted to hear them say that.
Yeah. Oh, I do it too because, like, I don't know. Sometimes I'm not quite socially apt to understand when people are being polite, or when when I'm just getting too passionate. And
you're a big character, same as me. It's tough.
I was at a station the other day, and they because we had to do a day on shift as a officer, and a couple of the boys were like, "Hey, can you take us through something this Arvo about 3:00?" And because I'm working Monday to Friday, 8 till 4, 8 till 4. We had to knock off at 4. So at 3:00, we all sat around, and they wanted to talk about warehouse fires. So we talked a little bit about warehouse fires, about offensive and defensive strategy, what those two words actually mean, tactics we can use. We've got a real problem with water runoff, and we were talking about water runoff and how, you know, mitigating water runoff is one thing, but if you have excessive water runoff, what does that mean? It means that your water's not doing anything. So now we've got to look at that end of the stick as well, not just what's going down the drain. And I think I left at 4:30, but I kept asking them, like, do you want me to keep going? They're like, yeah. And then, like, it got to do you want to keep going because it's past your knockoff time? And I'm like, yeah, of course I do. I'm having fun. We're drawing on whiteboards. We're having back and forth. We're asking questions. We're sharing experience. And that was so cool because we had, like, a couple of firefighters from other parts of the state on shift that day, and they were sharing their experiences with their differences in resourcing and all that kind of stuff. It was really organic, and it was really good. And I think everyone walked away happy, like what you did with yours. That's just awesome. Like, I want to be on that watch. That's the watch I want to be on.
Yes. Right, next one. This is one for me, which I think relates a lot to what you do and a lot to what I'm trying to do. And it says you can never leave footprints that last if you're always walking on tiptoes. Too many people are being quiet, so a few people can be comfortable.
Yep. So
that's an uncomfortable one. We can go into this as much as we want to, or as little as we want to.
So like you, we're both tall, tattooed, big guys that lift heavy weights, that have big personalities. I've been accused of being intimidating throughout my career, and you would have been the same, yeah?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and I'm very aware of this, so I'm really trying to make sure that I'm never intimidating. Like, I take 2 steps back from people now instead of standing like a step away. I stand 3 steps so I don't look as big or over them. I try and use open body language. Like, I'm constantly thinking about this stuff, and I know that's treading on tiptoes, but I need to relearn how to interact with people so that I get a better interaction with them and we get better messages out. Anyway, one of my mates was watching another one of my mates in the US at a conference. Kurt Isaacson was presenting, and he had a line up behind him, and it was an amazing line, and it was like, I am not intimidating, you are intimidated. I am not mean or aggressive. I am open, honest, and assertive. My presence intimidates your comfort. I'm not going to be less so that you can be more. Now, that hit home because I don't think that I've ever tried to be mean or overly aggressive in conversations about work, and all that kind of stuff, but people get intimidated. And I don't know if it is because they're in the comfort zone or if it's because they're, I don't know, like, I'm trying to understand
I think
it.
we challenge their blueprints and belief systems at times, which is very difficult for people. The team here at the podcast are extremely excited to announce our brand new partnership with Patrol Store UK. Patrol Store has been serving the UK's police, fire and emergency communities and first responder sector since 2008, providing leading brands such as Hikes, Magnum, 511, Nebo, Op Zulu, Highlander, AKU and many, many more of our favourites. They are now also supplying bespoke uniform, PPE and station workwear to fire services around the UK. So for all our listeners that are part of your USAR, your HEART team, your ISAR team, your armed response teams, your fire investigation, your NALO, your HAZMAT and all of the training departments that have got your own budgets, be sure to get the absolute best for your team at a realistic price by contacting Aaron and the team at Patrol Store and referencing the Firefighters podcast. Patrol Store will also be taking part in our listener competition giveaways as well as providing unique discounts to podcast listeners. So for people that are always asking about Hikes boots as an example, that is one unique discount code that is coming to you very soon through Patrol Store. We've also got some incredible bags. I mean, the Op Zulu bags are a game changer. So you know the really Gucci and expensive tactical black bags that everyone's using in CrossFit workouts and taking to the gym and taking to stations? Well, they've basically got that, but it's made better and costs less, because they're not slapping some Gucci expensive brand name on it and it's giving you what you want on a first responder salary. Be sure to keep your eyes in the notes of the episodes for links to unique offers and discount codes. And if you're looking to buy well and buy once, be sure to get in the notes and head over to Patrol Store UK. Now back to the show.
You challenge things, and like that's what you're meant to do. You're always meant to be challenging your thought processes, your beliefs.
Yeah, but also sometimes it's a fact of who you are shines a big light on the corners of my life that I wanted to explore myself. Like, yeah. I've had this many times as well. There are many, many people across the world, but certainly in the UK, there's no other real big UK firefighter podcasts. There's loads of people who would have done a far better one than me. Far better one than me. They're more knowledgeable. They're perhaps better well connected, whatever it might be. I fumble my way through this on a regular basis. I'm not as prepared enough, whatever. But for some reason, through the confines of their own perceived professionalism, not wanting to look stupid, whatever it might be, they haven't done it. But they wish they'd have done it. And sometimes that can really frustrate them. And then I go off and you go off and speak to all these interesting people from around the world, learn all of this new stuff, very open and transparent, and always staying the eternal student. And you bring a lot of this message back, but it comes with the underlying message that, oh yeah, Gerard learnt this because he's just been over to the UK again, or he's just been to wherever again. You know, fuck him.
Yeah.
You know, and all that sort of stuff. Why him, not me? Why do you want to invite him? He's not even that good. Doesn't even know anything. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? He's just big and impressive. And you're like, well, you do it then. No, you won't do it because you're too busy trying not to look stupid and you're too scared.
You're too scared. Like, I love being the dumbest person in a room. That's when I know I'm in the right room.
Yeah.
When I'm making a fool of myself, when I'm like, we were sitting there the other day up at John's and I'm talking with, so my organisation's getting one of those new Rosenbauer electric pumpers, you know, the RTs or whatever they are. And Carol's there like, oh, how does it pump if it runs out of battery? And I'm like, oh, it's got a diesel generator. And Carol's like, oh, what size generator is it? And then Carol did the math to work out if that generator could keep 100% pump capacity. And I was like, man, I am nowhere near you.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But I'm okay with looking stupid in front of him. Like we were talking about, what is it? Backflow in tunnels of smoke. And I was like, oh, you know, because cars actually help ventilate tunnels, and when they stop moving through because there's a fire, you get a backflow because low to high. And he's like, yes, kind of, but this is what happens. And like, was drawing it all up, and I'm like, man, again, I'm out of here. Like,
slow down. Slow down.
You get my pen and paper. I need to learn.
You're talking about physics and chemistry and hydrodynamics. Take me back to water is wet and start from there.
Fire is hot, water is wet, smoke rises.
And then take me from there if you can, please, and I'll raise my hand when you lose me again.
100%. But you have these experiences all the time. Like, I mean, I go to your country and I talk to some amazing people, like Stackowitz, Louis White, Johnny Raw.
Yeah. Stackowitz had run a far better podcast than me. He's very knowledgeable.
Who's that?
Very
Stackowitz?
knowledgeable. Yeah, but 100%. He's great.
But I'm gonna throw a shot across at him because he'll listen to this, mate. I wouldn't be able to understand him half the time.
He's got the combination of Scottish and Polish barrier, hasn't he? Bless him.
Love you, mate. Yeah.
He's very into the service that he works for as well. I'm not going to share where he works, but he's very into that. And sometimes I think you have to remember that the fire service is far bigger than your watch or your station or even your service. Do you know what I mean? I never speak about the organisation that I work for on the podcast because it's not about them. It's not about me bitching and moaning about all the things we do or don't do, because people, will contact me and go, oh, wow, but it's amazing where you work and this, that. I'm like, no, of course it's not. We have the same challenges everybody else has. We're underfunded. We've got people that are romantically committed to unproven, unfounded, with no scientific data methods of firefighting, and we struggle with it every day. I don't just go in there like the bloody saviour of the fire service, like Rain Man, and go, right, we're going to throw all national operational guidance out the window today, my watch, and we're going to do whatever we like because I'm in charge. It doesn't matter who shows up, I'll just talk them down. No, I have to do things that I don't agree with and adopt principles and methods that I know to not be the correct ones, and then quietly, when nobody's watching, we'll talk about them and go, this is what we're going to do at this incident.
Yeah, but we're never going to get any change if we don't address, if we don't have a conversation. This is the thing, right? Like, you go away, you learn stuff, and a couple of things. America, England, Australia, every fire service is the same. We've got people that love it. We've got people that are pretty apathetic. We've got people that are somewhere in between. We're good at some things. We're bad at others. It's the same the whole way around. But we've really got to look at having the conversations about what we're bad at. We've got to become comfortable with that. We've got to reach the learning zone. Have you heard of the learning zone theory?
Hit me with it.
So we measure psychological safety against ability or professionalism or whatever you want to call it, right? Or performance. Call it performance. So it's psychological safety against performance. So if we have low psych safety and low performance, we have an apathetic workforce. And what I mean by psych safety is being able to, feeling free enough to go, hey, I think we could do this better, or I think we stuffed that up, or I fucked up back here. Can someone help me? So we've got to build something that has that psych safety. If we've got high psych safety but low requirement for performance, we hit comfort. So yeah, I fucked that up, but that's all right. That's cool. Don't worry about that.
No one cares. Yeah.
No one cares. It's
the
all
public's
good.
got no idea what good looks like. It doesn't matter.
Now, if we've got high performance and low psych safety, we reach the anxiety stage because we know stuff's wrong, but we're not willing to have a discussion about it because we're scared that we're going to get isolated, we're going to get thrown away, whatever it is.
Then we're working in a concentration camp.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
we're like, I know I shouldn't be doing this. I'm just following orders.
Exactly. I don't want to get shot. I don't want to stick my head up. I know we're doing it wrong, but I don't want to. I don't want to rock the boat because I'll get stood down. I'll get written up. Something will happen to me. So I'm operating in an anxious state, and that's no way to operate either. So the last one is if we have high psych safety and we have high performance, we enter the learning zone. So hey, I stuffed that up. But let's look at how we could do it better, and let's come up with a strategy of how we could roll that out and share that learning. And there are organisations that are brilliant at it. FDNY are really good at learning from their mistakes. They've got like this whole lessons from training or tips from training thing. So anything that happens, anything big, anything dangerous, whatever it is, whatever they stuff up, they're like, hey, at this fire, this happened. So in future, if you see this, do this, be aware of this, come and see us, talk to this person for more information. That's the learning zone. That's where you want to be. And some organisations don't get there.
I can relate. A lot of places I work really struggle with it because I've worked in operational assurance before and putting together a lot of debriefs to share for brigade-wide communication. and it has to go round the houses 27 times for anyone that was involved in that incident to approve what's about to go out. And then they see it and they read it and they go, no, that's not my reflections. Like, I'd prefer you didn't put that. You need to change that. Actually, fire control won't permit that to be released. And I'm like, we're not going to put it on the Daily Mail. Yeah. We're not going to put it in the papers or on the BBC. This is going in internal communication. The facts are what the facts are.
It's by us, for us. When you play football or rugby or whatever, and you're in a team sport and you don't perform, what do? You come back in the sheds, you have a discussion about it, you go out there in the practice, you go to training, you get better. You don't go broadcast it to anyone else though, do you? No one knows what's said in the sheds. That's your time to reflect on what you're doing wrong and how to get better at it.
And you want the team to self-calibrate as well, don't you? You want a bit of kangaroo court where, it hasn't got to come from the leader or the manager or whoever. You want to come back in, and me and Gerard are wearing BA together. No one else knows what we did in there. They haven't got a clue, but we need to have that conversation together where we're like, people like to point fingers, they don't like to point thumbs. Yep. I want to say to you, brother, I was struggle keeping up with you then when I was dragging the hose. Actually, I fucked it up when I got that kink on the stairs and I didn't feed enough round, and that was actually what caused us that pinch point when we were at the top. And you can go, yeah, absolutely, I acknowledge that, mate. I actually saw you do that, and that's why I, paused halfway up the stairs. It wasn't ideally where I wanted to stop because I was kind of sat in the flow path. But we have that conversation. We need to be able to have that humility for self-reflection, because no one likes have fingers point at them. But if you're not willing to point thumbs at yourself, then,
Our commander of Ops Assurance came and had a bit of yarn to us. That's where I got this, the learning zone theory from. And he was saying that he's been doing a lot of research into this, and like the SAS, the Australian SAS, called a kick and a kiss. So after an operation, you come out, you give the team a kick and a kiss. What did you do well? What did we fuck up on? And be safe enough to go, hey, Pete, you really fucked up back there. We know that we deploy a hose this way, but you got caught up around here, or whatever it might be, but that I'm telling you that, not because I don't like you, not because I want to put you down, not because you think I'm better than you, because I'm like, hey man, I identified that, I see that. We're holding each other accountable. It's an accountability thing because we love each other, not because we think we're better than each other.
But also it's done from a place of support where you're like, look, here's where we think we mucked up there. Dave, Gerard, Sarah is really good at that. What I think is great, on next training session, we're going to put some time aside for you to spend with this person, because that's an element of your training. Not just going, you're shit, don't be less shit. It's like, well, help me out with that. What am I supposed to do? Help me understand a little bit more.
The biggest mistake of feedback is the illusion that it's taken place. So we've identified what you've done wrong, but then we haven't gone, okay, Pete, when we were managing hose, we need to think about where we need the branch to get to. So we've got to be constantly thinking about this. So what we need to go away and do for this specific scenario is understand that when we're moving through, you're going to bring this much hose to this point to be able to clear it. Or we've got a pinch point, but we know that we're only 5 meters into the building and it's a 10-meter building and the fire's at the rear. You need to preload 5 meters of hose past that pinch point so that we don't get caught up on it. Whatever it is.
We're going to go into this building. I'm going to tell you where I'm going to travel to, and you're going to preload at this point. When we get to that point, I'm going to tell you, right, this time we're going 2 meters. This time we're going 6 meters. I'm going to get down there. You tell me what you think we need to do next and how much you think we need.
And then we're going to take your vision away from you, and we're going to do it again. And then we're going to, so that it becomes that cognitive, associative, autonomous model of training where we go right back. But when we give feedback, we give them the solution to the problem. That coaching thing.
100%.
And we've got to be coaches. We can't be instructors. You're not going to be there to play the game with them on the day.
No. Right. Next one. And this is something that you spoke about a little bit earlier around the way you talk to yourself, the way you treat yourself. And it's also a nice overlay on some of the stuff we've discussed around the way people perceive us. So character versus reputation. Reputation is what the world thinks of you. Character is what you think of yourself. Self-confidence is the reputation you have with yourself. Do you keep the promises you make to yourself? Can you rely on you? Talk to me about the way we think people see us versus the reputation we have with ourselves. And it's a little bit around that perception you had around the way you're coming across to other people, the way I've certainly come across to people in the past, but the reputation you have with yourself and how that guides who you are, how you wake up every day, how you treat your family, how you treat yourself. Do you keep the promises you make to yourself?
I fail every day keeping promises to myself.
Okay.
And
how do you handle that setback every day?
not well. Like, I'm getting better at handling it. But for example, I'm trying to cut weight, but I'm a Labrador. So, like, I walk past the fridge, I've got to check to see what's inside it, and I reward myself. You did well today. You went to the gym. You deserve a little treat, like. So I break that promise all the time, but I try and get better, and I try and consciously acknowledge where I fall down, so that I hold myself accountable in the future, so that I can be that person that I want to be. And I guess I value resiliency and accountability. That's what I'd like to be known as. And like, I hold people to account, but I'd like people to know that I hold myself to account.
Yeah. It's hard to be my friend because I want you to hold me accountable. Yeah. I want you to be tough on me. If I turn up to this podcast today 10 minutes late, I want you to go, Pete, is everything okay? I recognise we're supposed to have started at 15:15. It's 25 past now, brother. And if I go, fucking hell, Gerard, I'm really busy. Actually, you know what, mate? Fuck you. I haven't got time for this. Well, okay. Well, then that means you don't like being held accountable. Okay. My relationship with you, and I don't have constant relationships with a lot of people, you make me a better person because you hold me accountable to the best version of myself through our interactions, through WhatsApp, phone calls, the messages we send on the social media, the things we send, whatever. You hold me to a higher standard. It's that value of association, isn't it? It's that rising tide raises all the ships. I want to be around people that expect the best version of me on a regular basis. And I will fail them on a regular basis, but I want them almost like delusionally to keep holding me to a higher standard. Maybe an aspiration I'll never attain, but I want you to believe that I can do it.
This is interesting, right? So you look at experiments around expectation. They took 2 classes. They gave them the same scores of everything. You've heard of this, haven't you? And they gave them 2 teachers, and they said to one teacher, this class is the bottom of the year. They're not that great. And they said to the other teacher, your class is the top of the year group. They're amazing. They do so much better. And what they found was that the bottom one went lower, the top one went higher. They were the same. They started at the same, but because the teachers went in there with the expectation that these people aren't that great, they didn't hold them to account. They didn't hold expectations of them. They fell. When the teacher went in and believed that the class was going to go up and held them to account and expected them to improve, what happened? They improved. And that's a huge thing to think about for yourself. So for you personally, hold high expectations of yourself because you will meet them. If you hold low expectations of yourself, you won't meet them. If you don't have accountability, you're nothing. And then if you hold other people to high expectations in a positive manner, not in a negative manner, but in a positive manner, they will rise to meet you. So if someone's struggling with something, don't worry, you got this. We're going to work through this together. You have the ability to do this. You put in the effort, you will achieve this.
Yeah. Because we'll always navigate back to our identity, won't we? And if you identify as someone who is a high performer, like for me, Pete Wakefield, I am a high performing, fit, healthy guy. So I will always gravitate back, even if I have, as I have had, big physical setbacks, torn pecs, snapped knees, all of this sort of stuff. But I am a fit and healthy guy. So I will always gravitate back to that. I will always find that as my anchor, as my center. And I always think about this when I'm speaking to other people, when I'm speaking to my daughter, when I say, baby, you're always so hardworking. I love how emotionally intelligent you are when you listen to me or to mummy or to, my friends. You're always so present. And that's why it's really surprised me. Like I was so taken back the other day when I introduced you to Gerard and you were kind of like super busy. And I know how passionate you get about things, But the accidental effect of that, I felt, was like, maybe you didn't fully acknowledge them when you were there. And I know that's not who you are. So like, help me understand what was going on in that moment, because I love that the best version of you is something I'm just like head over heels for. So like, help me understand the kind of headspace you were in right then. But I'm talking to the best version of her.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Because that is her identity. This is the person you are. And this bit here was just a deviation from the standard. Like, I'm a winner.
Yep.
Even if I lose 10 times in a row, I'll just go, I'm a winner who's going through a little losing streak at the moment. But I'm a fucking winner.
You're going through a learning streak.
I'm going through a learning streak. I've got win or learn tattooed on my ribs here. Ever heard the quote that true leaders are readers? Well, we believe this is true. Listeners often ask where we go to keep our finger on the pulse of what's happening in the sector globally. So there are a few key publications which I encourage you to go check out. Now, if you're looking for insights on disaster management, fire protection, and firefighting, for us, we go to Asia Pacific Fire Magazine. And when you're looking for the latest on the Middle East fire protection industry and fire services, it's Gulf Fire Magazine. And our quarterly check-in is with International Firefighter Magazine, reporting to municipal, industrial, and fire training professionals. Now, next up, and widely accepted to be the global voice for passive and active fire protection, this is a good one. It's International Fire Protection Magazine. And finally, and perhaps the most relevant to our predominantly UK audience, I'd strongly suggest subscribing to UK Fire Magazine, reporting to the United Kingdom fire protection industry and fire services. We're really excited to announce that after a long-standing relationship and mutual respect, we've now partnered with MDM Publishing, who bring you all of these essential publications. Because in a world of change, the learners shall inherit the earth, while the learned shall find themselves perfectly suited for a world that no longer exists. Eric Hoffer said that, and I believe he was right. So keep growing, keep learning, and keep yourself in the know and at the cutting edge of what's happening globally by dropping into the notes. And as a gift from the podcast, you can actually subscribe to any of these publications for free using the link in our notes. Now back to the show.
There's a general that says the hardest enemy to fight is the one that loses and goes away and learns, because they will come back twice as hard. But circling back to what you were talking about there with what you identify as, so you will be, right? Like, if you're, so you ask this person who's quit smoking, why you're not a smoker? Oh, because I don't see myself as a smoker anymore. Bang, you're not a smoker. Let's go back to the firefighter question that I posed. Do you identify as a firefighter? Is that part of you? Remember the shut your eyes, picture a firefighter. Do you see yourself? Do you identify as that? You know, like I know you do. I know I do.
100%.
I know a lot of people do.
And everything in my life and my body and the way I dress and the way I condition myself, the way I behave. Yeah. Most people make the accident of saying, how long were you in the military for? I've never been in the military. Never been in the military. I wouldn't pretend to be. I have a tremendous amount of respect for the men and women that are out there doing that. I don't do that. I've never been trained to do that. I'm sure it's very difficult. But people think that because you seem to live such a disciplined militaristic life, that they associate those elements of discipline with someone that is a high performer. Yeah, because I am. Yeah. And I think it's sad that they don't naturally go, oh, you must be a firefighter. They go, oh, you must be in the military. Because I don't think we hold our first responders, we don't expect the same level of professionalism and discipline perhaps from them as we do from our military. And again, there's pros and cons for that.
Yeah, I reckon the community expects everything from us. Like the community you serve expects everything from you in their time, and they expect you to turn up and be a firefighter. And are you willing to do firefighter shit? Like, are you willing to do firefighter shit? And firefighter shit is taking risks, is exposing yourself to problematic things. We can talk about safety all you want, and I'm big on safety. I don't want anyone going home hurt. I want to turn around and see everyone in the truck with me when we get on after a call. But the tough reality of this job is that sometimes you've got to put yourself at considerable risk to get a considerable reward.
I often think this about my daughter, like, do you want your children to be safe or do you want them to be competent and resilient? Because the safest child will never leave the bedroom.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? The safest firefighter will never leave the station. We're exposing you to risk every time you're out there.
It's John's story of like, all right, we go to we make the call that we're not going to go internal if no one's reported inside. We're just going to turn up and put water in from the outside, confine the fire to the building of origin, and that's that. And you could go 5 years without going to a person's reported fire. Easily. Like, I know in Australia you could you guys? Yep.
Yeah, definitely. 100%.
So we go 5 years of just turning up, putting water in from the outside, not putting ourselves at risk. And then we get that night where grandma's upstairs, fire on the ground floor, can't get in. Now, that crew has avoided risk so much that they don't know how to handle it. They don't know how to do anything with it. So they're
more dangerous.
They're more dangerous. They're going to suck, and they're not going to be thinking straight. They're going to be so heightened. And then, let's look at the risk we actually put themselves at. So they turned up to this fire. They put themselves at considerable physical risk. They've put themselves now at mental risk because they're all having meltdowns because this is such a high-stress environment and they don't know how to act. They're probably going to walk away with some PTSD or PTSI or whatever you want to call it because of that incident, because they failed when they were meant to turn up and do things. And it's just such a flow-on effect, massive flow-on effect.
Mm.
And I talk about this, there's 3 questions you've got to ask yourself before you put someone inside, and that determines whether or not you're going inside or not. Do you have the resources you need to do what you want to do? Do you have the water required to fight the fire? And is the building going to stand up? Mm. If you can answer yes to those 3 things, people are going in. If you say no to one of those things, people have to stay outside. That's how you weigh up considerable risk. Do I have the people? Do I have
I think
the
that's
water?
how we should weigh it up. But now, even if it's just savable property, some people will go, no, it's not worth a firefighter's life. No one said they were going to die. No, it's not worth the exposure to the toxins. Okay, just be a professional when it comes to decontamination. You know what I mean? I'm like, not putting them inside, because that building, that hotel, that warehouse, that's somebody's business.
Yep.
The socioeconomic value of that property and the people that it employs, that may never recover from that.
Well, let's talk about the cancer thing, right? I am so proud of my organisation's response to decontamination and cancer, like cancer culture. We have a huge cancer culture. We're massive on it. We had a big warehouse fire not long ago. They're taking our bloods, they're taking our urine samples, they're doing all of this. So they did it 48 hours after, 5 days later. They're monitoring us like crazy. It's amazing. But with that, coupled with that, has to be a culture of extinguishment. What's the one thing we've learned from firefighter cancer is that the longer we're exposed to it, the longer we wait before we wash ourselves, the more likely we're going to have a lot of stuff enter our system, right? So if you don't have a culture of extinguishment, a culture of putting the fire out as quickly as possible, you can have the best decon system in the world, but it's worthless because your firefighters are still standing there for 5 hours when they could have been there for 1.
Yeah, I think that exposure and that proficiency and the speed at which we move. I always say it we were talking about radiation last night because we were talking about indirect attack and all this sort of stuff, some things that were coming up on Lars's presentation. And I said, well, what's the principles of radiation? And one of them was like, oh, well, okay, no, sorry. I mean, I thought we were going to do fire behavior, but we'd change gears to hazmat. Because as soon as you say radiation, people think that you're on about chemical radiation. But I said, well, what's the principles that we tend to teach and that are always taught in the UK? It's time, distance, and shielding. Yeah. So when you apply that model to what is radiation? Okay, what's that thing in the corner of that? It's a radiator. Yeah. What's it giving out? Heat. So it's radiating heat. Yeah. So when I'm in there in the fire, time, distance, and shielding, I want to move with purpose. Yeah. I want to move forward rapidly in an aggressive manner through this compartment so that I'm not exposing myself for any longer than I need to. Time. Distance, if I can see the fire from where I am, hit the fire. I don't need to get right in there in the room and just pulsey, walkie. You can see the fire, put water on the fire. Yeah. Shielding. I don't need to stand right in front of it. Maybe I can hit it from maybe I can hit it from the outside. Maybe I can bounce it off the ceiling, bounce it off the wall. Get in there aggressively, get it done, put water on the fire, ventilate, get out. Yeah. Do it at the glacial pace that we move through search and rescue in the UK and firefighting in general and structural firefighting. It's just painful. It's painful to watch. It's Mike Statuis did a very funny briefing on it when he went over and did some courses with Carol and stuff.
Yeah, I looked at that episode. And it's
Oh, the
crazy.
way he talks through it, and he says, and then we do this, and they go, okay, and then you go in, no, and then we do this, and then we come
And then
back,
we've
and
got
then we
to talk.
discuss it again.
Then we've got to talk. And it's the same inside. Like, okay, we're doing some gas cooling. So, oi, Pete, I'm going to do this gas call over here. Hey, Pete, can you show me what I did on the
Yeah,
tip? Yeah, mate, let me just
yeah,
grab
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Oh, hang on, here it is. Hey, that did nothing. Let me do it again. Hey, Pete,
Yeah.
can you
Hey,
show
watch
me?
this gas call. Did you see that? Oh, 30-degree cone. Like it when it was really good. And I really like that. I really love you did the adjustment and everything. I'll do another one. Watch this.
Yeah.
What am I doing? It's painful. Right. Next one. This one for me is around the way we dictate ourselves, the way we conduct ourselves. So managers enforce rules, leaders enforce values. And I want to couple that with another one of my favorites, which is you're going out there, you're sharing a lot of these messages, you will come up against a lot of pushback in the people that you speak to at times. And I remember hearing it said, never wrestle with a pig, because you'll both get covered in shit, but the pig will enjoy it.
Yeah.
You know, so how do you, and I suppose the question I'm asking on top of that is, how do you know when it's worth trying to spend time with someone who's in a student mindset versus you can't get everybody on board and that's okay?
You can't get everybody on board, but you shouldn't stop trying. You just
Okay.
shouldn't. Like, if you care, you just got to keep having the conversation, but you've just got to learn how to communicate better. The favourite person to watch communicate an idea to someone, for me, is John McDonough.
It's
He can
crazy.
walk in. He can walk into a room and he can talk to you about any situation. Like, so you can go, oh, but what about this? And he's like, okay, let's talk about that. How did that happen? Why is that going on? And he'll get you to talk yourself into his way of seeing things. So, like, yeah, John can take a pig and show him that mud's no good.
If you're a regular listener to the podcast, then chances are you are big into your own personal development and the development of firefighters around you. So I wanted to remind you of our mobile app Drill Book. This is a free training and development resources made by firefighters for firefighters. Heading on to Drill Book, you will find incident debriefs, radio messages, notes and lines, quick reference guides, quizzes every single day. We've got useful links to the ERG, to Web Rescue, to Jessup, Euro Rescue, 10-second triage, National Operational Guidance, and not to mention our daily quizzes where you will find questions on extrication, casualty handling, breathing apparatus, fire development, water rescue, rope rescue, you name it. It is the go-to resource if you've got a spare 5 minutes on the firehouse to develop yourself and those around you. Not only that, if you're looking to get into the fire service, we've got advice on there on interview questions, interview answers. You can build your own questioning in there. And again, remember, this is built by firefighters for firefighters, so you can add your own drills in there. You can pick the drills that you find the most favorite. There is literally hundreds of training ideas, hundreds of drills in there. Remember, this app is absolutely free and it grows every single day down to the contributions of our thousands and thousands of users. It's freely available on Android, Apple, and you will find it in the links for this podcast. Remember, it's called personal development. The clue's in the name. You've got to work twice as hard on yourself as you do on the job. So always be growing, always be developing. Now let's get back to the show. Some people are religious about this sort of stuff. I always say to people, like, what piece of data or evidence could I show you that would change your method of thinking? And if there's nothing I could show you or tell you or demonstrate to you that would change your method of thinking, then you don't have a logical idea or a logical approach or concept. You have a religious, mythical belief. And I can't, and again, with absolute respect to anyone of a religious background, there's no evidence I could give you that God isn't real. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. The fact that I tell Gerard a story 4 years ago and then ask him to write it down now, his recollection of that story will be very different. And then I ask him to tell 20,000 other friends at 1 year intervals, and then we all write it down and change it. With respect to any written scripture of religion, you really think to yourself, you know, if you'd have told the doctors of 5 years ago how to look after their teeth, they'd have laughed you out the room versus what we're doing now. So I just think the passage of time with some of these things doesn't always hold true. And again, to echo back to the point I'm trying to make is some people, and I've never seen John do this, so I think that's because he's just a better communicator than me. Most definitely he is. Some people, they're not interested in what you've got to say.
Some people aren't, but it circles back to that. You can't teach anybody anything. You can only teach them how to think. Don't try and teach them. Like, don't have the argument. As soon as you have the argument, you've lost.
Yeah.
right? So you've got to start getting them to think retrospectively about what you're doing. And that can be changing it from preaching to changing it to asking questions. Because if I'm sitting there telling you how to do something, or if I'm sitting there asking you, okay, why's that happen? Oh, shit, I don't know. Let's look into that. Oh, that's why it happens. Okay, so if that happens, what could we do about it? Oh, we could do this. Yeah, we could. Or what about this? Would this work? Because that kind of does this, this, and this. Oh, that might. Do you know what I mean? It's just changing it to instead of having the argument, because if you have the argument, you lose straight up. I've got a lot of experience in having the argument and losing, to taking people on the journey. And like I'm novice in it. I'm trying my hardest, but it's about making people aware of things, like asking them the questions, changing the way they think about the subject. Because a lot of people have religious belief and, like, rise to a level of mediocrity to avoid further scrutiny.
John again.
Yeah. So I wasn't going to say his name because I think we've mentioned it too much already. But to change it to apply that and go, okay, so if we rise to a level of mediocrity to avoid further scrutiny, what do we have to do to change that? Either we have to change our level of scrutiny, right? So how do we do that? How do we change our level of scrutiny? Well, we've got to have values and standards. So how do we have values and standards? Well, we've got to agree that this is kind of important what we do. And, like, I've always found it such a juxtaposition that we rise to a level of mediocrity to avoid further scrutiny, yet I have never seen one firefighter not try their bloody hardest at a fire to do the best job they can. And I think it's such a juxtaposition because both are true. Do you know what I mean? Both are true.
I wonder if you're looking at incidents through your own filter as well, because we all are, though. I gravitate to and focus on high performers, and they're the ones I interact with. I probably largely don't see the underperformers. I think they probably hide, not because I'm so amazing, but because they probably know being around me, I will want the best of them.
Why are they hiding?
I think maybe through a lack of self-belief. I don't think they can't do it.
So why do they have a lack of self-belief? Because they don't believe they can do it. Do you know what I mean? And why don't they believe they can do it? Because they probably got taught. So, the old story of the fish? You need to teach someone to move a distance, right? That's the objective. Teach someone to move a distance. You'll never teach a fish how to climb a tree, but geez, it can swim. So why don't they have self-belief? Because we have models of training that apply to one learning, so sit here and die by PowerPoint, then we're going to go outside and we're just going to yell at you because we talked about it in the bloody PowerPoint. How don't you remember what we talked about in the PowerPoint? And then they're just like, oh, well, I don't want to be yelled at anymore, so I'm just going to try my bloody hardest and look there and nod and be polite. So, again, it comes back to looking at how we treat the people when they enter our organisation, looking at how our mindset around training. Your people that you have high psychological safety because they're willing to sit there on your watch last night and talk about fire behaviour and talk about all this stuff because they feel safe and they feel like you have belief in them and they feel like they can talk and they want to get better. But how many watchers are like that?
I think it's probably a lot more than we think there is because, I always try and remind myself we're not special.
No.
We're just choosing to discuss these things on a public platform. There's many unspoken heroes that will they'll be sat on a station right now on a weekend on their time off, spending 5 hours with someone unpaid to help them get it.
The amount of people I've listened to your podcast who contact me, who I would never have picked as someone who would be listening to a firefighter's podcast.
Yeah.
I'm like,
it is weird.
Yeah, but you're like, cool.
I try and ignore that because it feels a bit weird otherwise.
Well, no, but they're contacting me, right? And I didn't like, and this is my personal bullet. Like, I've got to change my lenses. But sometimes the people that contact me, I didn't have any idea they were into the job. I didn't have any idea that they spent their free time listening to firefighting podcasts.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So, like, you're right. There are heaps of people out there. There's heaps of unsung heroes. You and me are choosing to talk about it on this public platform, but there are heaps of people out there fighting the good fight and doing the right thing. What we've got to do is help the people that don't have self-belief believe in themselves.
And I think a lot of those people listen to this stuff as well because they want to get better, and they might be in a culture that perhaps doesn't encourage that. And I think when they hear you speak, or they hear the other guests that we have on speak, it makes them feel less alone.
Yep.
Is my hope. And that's why they reach out to you and me and many of the guests that we have on. So on that analogy of the way that we talk to people and the way that we communicate, and the way that we're communicating right now, and the platform that exists here, and Lars and John and other people, self-censorship is trapping ourselves in this golden cage. And professionalism, I think of, is a prison, and people are begging to be inside it. Like, some instructors that are perceived to be the most professional are maybe rarely the most relatable. Like, I think when people do see Lars, John, all Carol, yourself, many great speakers that we have come on and that speak around the world, they don't communicate always in accordance with their service or brigade or department's written values, but they're far more relatable, and they put humor in there, and they're flexible with their language and their examples and things like this. Help me unpick how self-censorship and our perception of professionalism can be a barrier to actually engaging in the people that we say we're trying to help.
It's that weird outward-facing thing that fire rescue services have, isn't it? That weird perception that the fire and rescue services have, that people are judging us all the time, and they're just waiting to put one complaint in and all that kind of stuff. And like, I hate it because it nullifies accountability. It nullifies open, honest conversation. It nullifies, for want of a better term, free speech about how we are and what we're doing. And we don't ask ourselves any questions around anything because we're so scared of saying the wrong thing that we're too afraid to even speak. And we've got to have difficult conversations if we want to progress. And like, being a watch manager like yourself, or a station officer, like I'm in station officer school at the moment. The job is about having difficult conversations with people.
Yeah.
So why can't we sit there and be honest about our abilities? Why can't we sit there and talk about pressing issues around what we're doing and how we're achieving it, and being able to say, yeah, look, we're not meeting the mark here, but we're striving for it. Values, organisational values, is something to strive for. But I can point to my organisation's values, and I can say that we're trying to strive for that, but at times they've fallen short, and at times we, the workforce, have fallen short of meeting those values. And I challenge them to say that they've upheld them at all times. They haven't, but at the same time, I'll turn around and say we haven't as employees.
Mm-hmm. And that's where we need to have that forgiveness and recognise this person as a part of our organisation, a part of our family, and keep them in that sphere of safety, and help train them, help educate them, help develop them, rather than go in. Because what message does that send to the rest of the service when Gerard or Pete does or says something that's out of turn or is not in full alignment with what was written down in the policy? That's an opportunity to educate and do some shared learning. But if I just hit him with a big stick, all I'm doing is creating a more of a fear culture. I think of it with my dogs. I've got 3 dogs. One of them does something, the other 2 don't see what he did. They don't see it. But if I just turn around and shout at him or smack him or kick him, not that I would kick him, but all they go is, oh shit, I don't want to get kicked. I'm not entirely sure what just happened. We're not allowed to talk about it. The HR dog department says we're not allowed to discuss it on station, but that dog just got kicked. I don't want to get kicked. Don't do whatever he did, but no one knows what he did.
So it just shuts down everything. Instead of going, and like, again, go back to you hitting your dog. Well, where's the problem start? You met your dog with anger. You didn't go, oi, buddy, why'd you do that? Can you tell me what you were thinking when you went down that path? Look, I was thinking about this, and this is how I'm feeling, and this. Hey, man, you highlighted something really important that we as an organisation need to look at. Or, hey, man, I don't think that's quite right, and here's some evidence of why.
Pause him, correct him, help him understand what good looks like, reward him.
Exactly.
Right, he's jumping up on the side. Right, no, down. Good boy. Reward. We don't jump up. You're going to get your tea in a minute. We don't jump up on the side.
Ricky Gervais, I've been watching a lot of his stand-up. I've been watching a lot of his shows. I think he's a great
I love
artist.
him.
And he makes me
It's
think,
great.
he makes me think so much.
Did you see his film, the what's it called? The Creation of Lying or something?
Yes. Brilliant movie.
Oh, a very, very difficult point at religion again, but bloody hilarious. And just a thought-provoking concept, isn't it?
And so, like, his afterlife one, right? Where,
Yeah.
you know, he loses his wife and all that. Just finished watching that again as mindless TV in the background while I've been doing other things. And I inherently believe that people are good.
Yeah.
So I believe that everyone's intention is to be decent enough. You know, I think there's very few really broken people out there that get up in the morning and want to cause violence. But everyone gets so caught up in their own shit and fails to ask the question why, that we forget to be kind to each other in that respect. So instead of being like, "Hey Pete, you fucked up today. What the fuck were you thinking?" "Hey Pete, I want to have a yarn. Today this happened. Can you talk me through it, man?" "Oh well, this and this." "Pete, did you think about this or the flow and effect of that? Or Pete, I didn't see it that way, and I'm sorry that you're going through this tough time, and I'm going to do better to support you," and all that kind of stuff. You know, like,
Yeah, what would I need to believe, or what mindset would I need to be in to have done what Gerard just did?
yeah,
Because that's not him.
no,
What something has changed there. Something is different than it was yesterday. What would I need to believe, or what mindset would I need to be in to have behaved in the manner that you just behaved in? Because that's not you, and that's certainly not us.
yeah, 100%. And so circling back to the organisation, treat your people like that. It ain't hard. Like, and we preach it so much to ourselves as a fire rescue services internationally, the brotherhood, the trust. You know, there's so much trust in the fire service. Well, there's a level of trust. There is a level of trust that we have, right? But you also get told, write down everything. You know, make sure someone else is in the room. Do this.
I need a paper trail, please. Can you send me an email about it?
Is there a level of trust if I have to do that? Like, you know, where is the level of trust? There is a level of trust, but it's not as high as we preach to ourselves that it is.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah, and like and look, I've been guilty of it. I've been guilty of going off the handle first and not asking why and not checking in and going, that is unacceptable, that is horrible, that is this, that is that. Instead of going, hang on, check this out. Like, I'll circle back to a story. We had this recruit, and she was the best recruit of her recruit class. Like, she was the smartest, she was the most physical, she was the most capable, she was just brilliant. And came up to a final fire attack assessment, and the instructor I was working with hadn't been there, like hadn't seen this recruit. And I said, watch her. She is an absolute animal. She will destroy this. And she went on to fail it miserably, like horribly, like so out of character. So junior instructor me, what did I do? What do you think I did? What was that? What the fuck was that? You know better than that. That was shit. Rah, rah, rah. And then I reflected on it, and I went and talked to some people and asked, because this person started crying and stuff, and I was like, oh, maybe went a bit too far there. Found out that she hadn't slept that night because her partner had left her. Like, she'd left her partner and did all this stuff, right? And she turned up to work and she'd done all that. So now I've just kicked the dog who did something that was so out of character because I had no understanding of the background. And I made them feel even smaller. I destroyed, like...
Yeah.
And because I was so focused on myself, because I was trying to prove to this other instructor that this recruit that I'd taught was amazing.
Yeah.
You know, it's just horrible, horrible things. So I've learned, I've grown. That firefighter now, still one of the best firefighters I know. She is absolutely amazing. Proud to call her a friend. But yeah, it really taught me to actually look into things.
I've certainly had that with with close friends recently, even with us, some time ago, I was going through marital breakup and all that sort of jazz. And, you gave me some bandwidth at times. And this is just to balance it against our initial conversation around accountability. When you recognize that person's got other stuff going on, you give them that little bit of space, you give them that little bit of wiggle room. You appreciate they might be showing up at 90% or 80%. But like you said earlier, it's okay if you're showing up at 80%, but I want 100% of that 80%. It's okay if you're struggling with stuff, but when we're here, let's be here together. And then, not allowing that to permit forever, not setting that as the new bar, and, encouraging people to return back to the best version of themselves, which obviously she did. Recognizing that she was just having some struggles and some challenges.
Yeah, and to ask the questions, understand. Like you're like me. We have romantic visions of the fire service where we're rusted on, we're tragics, and you might have watched like 90s videos of Rescue 1, FDNY, all that kind of stuff. What do those crews have? A bond. Why do they have a bond?
Very strong.
Because they trust each other. Why do they trust each other? Because they're always there for each other. They show up. And they're very emotionally aware and intuitive of how each other are feeling. And they know whether to send someone a message saying, "Oh, you big piece of shit," or they know when to just go, "Hey, do you want to have a yarn? Do you need to talk?" And then they go out and they train and they crush fires and they do all that mad stuff. But none of that happens without that bond. None of it.
No. And that bond isn't something you can inherently write down or prescribe either. You have to allow people to... I always have this thing about bring yourself to work day. You have to allow the best and sometimes not the best versions of people to be able to show up to work every day and still be accepted, still be acknowledged and tolerated and valued. Because otherwise, if we just expect people to turn up as corporate robots every day, then they won't bring their true self to work, and that includes the good and the bad. And like you say, even though there are some sincerely evil people in the world, vast majority of them don't get attracted to the fire service because it doesn't pay very well. These people, if they have these big, sociopathic aspirations to get all the money and be really evil, they're not really going to achieve that in the fire service because it doesn't give you all the money and the freedom and stuff to do that. Some might be attracted to the power trip, but I don't think that lasts. Very few people are getting up every morning and trying to play one-to-one defense on the purpose of the fire service. I think they want to be there. They want to be part of it. Yeah. Yes, that tends to be what happens. Fuck this. I'm going to go and be in a profession where I can hit people with a truncheon or something. But no, brothers and sisters over there, we love them. Yeah. I wanted to talk to you about luck.
Yep.
Because I'm sure this is something that may have been accused at you or posed at you at times. And the quote, I'm going to fold in a few for me. So most people are happy to follow a tested career blueprint that fails rather than risking succeeding at a new approach. If you want to kill a big dream, tell it to a small-minded person. And also, you've got to have enough surface area for luck to stick to. So talk to me about the opportunities you've had, the places you get invited to, and kind of echoing back on that humility and openness and transparency to come on and learn out loud in public environments, and how you've been invited to places that your senior leaders probably never get invited to, and it will be strange. I certainly find myself in rooms on a regular basis where I'm like, I'm not sure why I'm here. I'm not sure what value people think I'm going to add in this room right now, but for some reason they think I deserve to be here.
Start with harder I work, luckier I get. That's the long and short of it. And then always walk through open doors. But take an opportunity. If an opportunity presents itself, just go for it. And if you have to fund that, if this is what you want to do and you want to travel the world and learn stuff and do all that, it sucks and you're going to have to pay for it yourself. But it's the best thing in the world. It's opened my eyes up, opened my networks up, and every single time I've done it, it's led to something else. So and then there's times where you just have to work and put yourself out there. So I've been writing articles for Fire Engineering magazine. and been lucky enough to have a couple. Well, I have one published and a couple in the pipeworks to be published when the issues suit the article content. But it's stuff. It's not what I'm known for either. It's not the stuff that I play around with. It's just the simple wildland urban interface stuff that I know as a firefighter from Australia that people from urban fire brigades around the world want to know more about because they're getting faced with this, right? So how do you go from being an urban firefighter to being sent out to a bushfire, wildfire, whatever you call them in your country, to protect properties and all that kind of stuff? And it's just like, okay, well, here's the list of priorities that we use in Victoria, and that's led to further opportunities because they're like, oh, well, do you want to come talk about this stuff? Can you come over here and do this and do that? And in the UK, like, going over to the Fire Services College, and I've built a great relationship with them, and they invite me to come speak at their conferences and stuff. And like, I look at the names on the list and I'm nobody, but they think I'm somebody, and they let me come up and talk, and it's been great. I've learned so much from going, like, I learned more from like 2 weeks in the UK traveling around to fire services, like John Muggleton and Dave Berry and that had me down at Manchester, and we had one of the best days.
Dave sends us love. He always speaks highly of you.
And we had a great day, like, because John Muggleton just took me around. We did a burn, and it was awesome because he's like, "Oh, show me what you do." And then it was like, "Oh, okay. Why'd you do that?" "I did it like this." "Well, we don't do it like that." "Why don't you do it like that?" And like, it was just back and forward, and it was brilliant. And I learned so much from like that experience. And then up and hanging out with Louis, and then my man Cumbria, speaking with Cumbria Fire Service as well, and then my man Dan Stevens down Merseyside.
Yeah, baby. Oh, Jesus. Dan's a diehard. He loves it. And again, with a military background, very, very disciplined man.
He is the man. Like, I've got so many Dan stories. And
he's read it. He's gone and done the research. He has read the thing. He can quote it to you.
Yeah. Oh, but he's also a firefighter. Like, I've watched him do drills. Like, for a chief officer, I'll share this one Dan story, and I hope he doesn't mind. When he came over to be the chief of the former organisation I worked for, he was, first of all, because he's the chief, he's an executive officer of the state government, he's given quite a handsome salary for rent while he's trying to find a place to live because of relocation. We also have an apartment at number 1 station. It's a dinky little thing. So where'd Dan stay? Do you reckon he took the big penthouse suite, or do you reckon he stayed at number 1 station? He stayed at number 1 station.
I bet he was out with all the different shifts.
Yeah. Now, he was out with all the different shifts. He'd be in the gym at 4 o'clock every morning, slamming down barbells and weights, waking people up. Then he'd, because he's an executive officer, he's entitled to a BMW or something like that. No, he drove a Vauxhall. Well, we call it a Holden Commodore. He drove a Vauxhall 4-door sedan, like one of our... He didn't go for the big beam or anything. He drove it a bit too fast, mind you, because he got a couple of... But then, so while he was staying there, the boys from the rescue station, number 3 station in Carlton, invited him down to show him a rescue drill and have a roast dinner with him. So he turns up, they have a brew, and then they head outside, and those guys, they're really good at rescue. Like, one of my mates, Skitty, he's probably one of the best out. Like, he'd be an international level mind. So they've set up this insane road traffic collision rescue thing. I'm not a rescue guy. And they wanted to show Dan how good they were. You know, the new chief officer's here. We've got to prove how good we are. So Dan, they're like, "Oh, Chief, you ready for us to start?" And Dan's like, "Hang on." Goes and gets his kit on. Hand me the spreaders. He did this really complex RTC as the chief officer of the fire service that I was working at, as the chief administrator. I'll follow that man into hell.
Loves it.
I'll follow that man down.
I go to war with him. Yeah.
But yeah, he like, you know, so even him, like, he's opened opportunities up for me through his contacts and his network. The Americans are brilliant. They've helped me out so much, and like, they've exposed me to things. I did this really sick conference last year. So I did a little bit at FDIC, Russ Timpson's Tall Building Conference, presented there, and one of my mates runs a training company, so I was helping out there with some hands-on training stuff. And then another one of my mates that I met from the first time I went to the fire service college invited me to speak at a conference in South Bend called Lake Effect. And talk about imposter syndrome. I'm sitting there, I'm like, what am I meant to talk to American firefighters about for, I think it was like an hour, it might have been 2 hours, my slot was.
Wow. It's a big slot.
So I'm like, I don't know what they want to hear. So I just wrote engine company operations from down under. So, like just how we run our fire service, and then what we base, the information we base our operation method on. So BSAF, our understanding of fire science, our understanding of ventilation. Like I brought up Braidwood and went, 200 years ago, this bloke was saying that we shouldn't open up things before we have water on the fire. 200 years it stood the test of time. Probably still shouldn't. And that was one of the sickest conferences I've ever been to. Absolutely great. Brilliant. And it was just so cool. But yeah, sorry.
How do you manage that? No, not at all, brother. I love that story. How do you manage that imposter syndrome? Because the next point I want to tie into that is, and it's a bit about what Dan going over there and doing something he'd always aspired to do. You going and having these travels. You say you only joined 12 years ago. You don't look like you're 30 years of age. So I know you didn't join when you were 18. So you did have a previous life before this, but it's a George Eliot quote that says, it's never too late to be what you could have been. And perfection kills progress. Certainty is only available in hindsight. Sometimes you've just got to go with what you got, like showing up to that conference and not fearing looking stupid, or it's okay to fear looking stupid, but often another one of my favorite quotes is that failure is a mile wide, but it's only an inch deep. You look like you'll drown in it. You won't. It's not going to kill you. Like, talk to me about, I suppose, a bit of Dan's story, a bit of your story, wanting to still do this, even though you didn't join when you were a baby. It's never too late to be what you could have been.
Yeah. So in Australia, you can't join the fire service till you have a truck license, and you can't get a truck license till you're 21-ish, 22-ish. So the youngest we see people is 21. I got my offer at 23 and was 24 on recruits. But I've always wanted to do this. I don't see anything else that I could have done. Before I did this, I did butchery, and then I got bored of working with my hands and not my head. Nothing against butchers, but making sausages and cutting chops is making sausages and cutting chops, and I wasn't going to put myself out there and run a business. And I guess that's where the brain power comes in. We saw a girl, she wanted to go to uni, so I decided to go to uni too, did psychology, because I was interested in how people think. And got into my second year at that, not really enjoying it. Sitting at the traffic lights, the pumper pulled up next to me, and I was like, oh, that's something you always wanted to do, so that's when I started chasing that. But the imposter syndrome is such a big thing, and I have it constantly. Like, I don't think I'm that smart or good at this. And I think I'm passionate about it. I'm definitely passionate about it. And because I'm passionate about it, I'm willing to have the conversation with anyone, anytime. I'm also willing to go, hey, help me better understand this. Or you want to know the best thing you can do when you're getting up speaking in front of people and you're a bit nervous about it? Be honest. People love authenticity, and they can smell bullshit a mile off.
I always say you can't pickpocket a naked man.
Yeah.
So if you're totally open and transparent, there's no gotcha. Like I never come on here and pretend to be the god of fire science. I'm a student. I'm just here learning.
To the smarter people, I'm just trying to translate what they tell me. I'm trying to translate what I understand they're trying to tell me into how we can actually take it out there and apply it with real world factors. So like hose management, for example, I'm realistic. I get 45 minutes to an hour to teach you how to manage a friction point and take hose inside and size up how much hose and I could stretch this out to a full day. But we're there teaching them like, oh, just do this, we're going to steer the bus, we're going to preload, or we're going to throw a coil. That's it. And we're going to move them like this, and we're going to stay low, and we're going to move like this. And I don't drag bikes or anything like that, because I'm like, every house fire I've ever been into, I can't get down the hallway by myself, let alone have you next to me showing me a tick in front of me. So let's get realistic about it. Like, how are you and me going to sit next to each other ever? In a way.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, move past
In a warehouse.
they like move past the pram and the settee and all that kind of stuff. Like,
Yeah.
So I just try and take what they do and give it the litmus test of, can I do it in the dark? Is number one, because I can't see. So whatever technique I'm trying to do, can I do it with my eyes shut? And number two, is it realistic to the conditions we have out there? Because our burn buildings are not set up like people's houses. So how do I take those two things? So I guess my imposter syndrome comes when people probably put expectations on me that I know so much more than I do. And I used to be real sciencey. Like, I used to love writing up chemical equations and all that. Now I don't do any of that anymore. And because I don't do it anymore, I couldn't tell you the number of carbon and hydrogen atoms in a paraffin wax candle. But what I can tell you is that I'll be honest and authentic about it. And it hasn't helped me be a better or worse firefighter knowing that, but what has helped me be a better firefighter is understanding what happens to those things.
I always say to people, I don't want to know the molecular makeup of marmalade. I want to know if you can open the jar.
Yeah.
I don't want to know the biochemical composition of a banana. I want to know if you can peel it.
Yeah. And I want to know that the people telling me this stuff know what they're talking about. Like, I'm listening to the people who can tell you that stuff, because that's important too. That's facts. And then I'll try and put the realistic spin from my operational experience and all that kind of stuff into it. And from what I've read and what I learned and from who I talk to and asking questions. But back to imposter syndrome. Be honest, be open, be authentic, and people will judge you. Like, so if you're thinking about getting up and speaking in front of people as an instructor or just trying to convey information or anything like that, people make up their mind of whether they're going to listen to you within the first 15 seconds. Right?
Yeah.
So if you come out there and go, "G'day, guys. Pretty nervous. How are you?
Yeah.
What have you done?" They're not expecting that instantly. No one's expecting you to do that. So they're eyes on you. They're like, "Hey, this guy's pretty nervous. What would I be doing if I'd be pretty nervous too?" They're starting to relate to you. They're starting to engage with you. You're starting to seem human and not superhuman.
They build rapport with you. They empathise. They're like, "Oh, no, it's cool, brother. I want you to be here. I want you to, say what you've got to say. I want you to say, we're here to listen. We're here. We're good. We're leaning in. I'm interested."
Exactly. And so that's there. It doesn't mean that I don't have imposter syndrome all the fucking time, but that's kind of how I deal with it. Like, I'm pretty open and honest. And the other thing is, I'll challenge people by going, "All right, you're telling me to do this. What about this?" And I ask the questions back at them. "Okay, so you're telling me that I'm going to drag a bite along behind me and do this. How am I doing that in a real fire?"
Yeah.
Because I tell you I'm not, because that don't happen. And it will never happen. Yeah. You could train as much as you want, but that's never going to happen in a real fire, because people have furniture, dogs, cats, kittens, whatever in my road, and there's needles on the floor, there's whatever. How can I take a skill and relate it? And like, I really hone into the instructors that I work with in my organisation. Sometimes they watch a lot of YouTube videos and they're there and they're like, "Oh, if you're making a left-hand turn, you should be putting your hand like this, and you should like kind of move your body that way." And I'm like, no one's got the brain power in this moment. Well, like, okay, so we've got 45 minutes and you're choosing to convey that. I'm not saying it's bad information, but I'm saying these people have 45 minutes. They never touched a hose, and in 45 minutes they're going to know how to navigate 3 friction points.
That's a useful thing to discuss with a passionate 10-year firefighter, how they can go from good to great. You know, what we're trying to do now is make safe, competent, confident firefighters to be able to do it to a level of safety that doesn't require my micromanaging supervision.
Once I've got you teach with the cognitive associative autonomous model, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So once you've got the cognitive, then we can start associating it, and then we can give it autonomy. And until we've built the cognitive skill, there's no point talking about association. None at all. Yeah. 100%.
You've got to take people where they are. I want to be respectful of our time. I know there's a few bits that we wanted to talk about. We've just absolutely crushed. I've absolutely loved that conversation. I perhaps wanted to finish with with a little one that I've got in the back of my head, and it speaks around the openness and humility that you've communicated with today, the desire to bring people with you. I always say you can go faster alone but further together, and we want people to come along on this journey. We want, there's some great groups and WhatsApp groups and little things going on in the UK at the minute where a lot of podcast listeners and guests are kind of getting together, feeling less alone and pushing each other further. But sometimes we do have those moments where we're very, very critical of each other, and we're not critical to help each other progress. Sometimes we're just critical to score points, and then I wanted to overlay an analogy of ladders. So like in the UK, when we teach climbing ladders, we always talk about 3 points of contact from a very simplistic point of when we're climbing, we try and aspire to have, well, not aspire, we have 3 points of contact, so we're not going to fall off the ladder. And I always say to people, every time you stop, I always say this to students, when you're climbing a ladder, 3 points of contact, every time you stop to throw stones, to criticize somebody else, to push someone else off their ladder, you're not making progress, because you've had to stop climbing to throw stones and criticize. You're not trying to bring anybody with you. You're stood still. You're not progressing. None of us are progressing. So I suppose the overarching principle of the podcast is about shared learning and stuff like this. I would love to close by how you feel about why we should have these learning conversations. We've created a lot of psychological safety in this conversation. I think it's an attribution to our kind of relationship. Not all people will have those relationships, but it would be a great aspirational goal to think that these types of conversations aren't only happening in environments like this, because I imagine they are happening everywhere. But how do we stay in a mindset where we're not seeking to criticize and tear other people down? We want to learn together.
That's an interesting one. And again, I'm going to go back to why. Like, why are we tearing each other down? This is just observation and a little bit of pseudo-psychology, but I'm just going to say this. You get further when you don't care who gets the credit.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to initiate change, if you're trying to move somewhere, don't worry about whether your name's going to be attached to it, because at the end of the day, I know exactly how to answer this question because I was thinking about this the other day. I'm doing officers. I've mentioned it a few times. I got really pissed off that I have to not be a leading firefighter anymore.
You and I spoke about this.
It was a lot to me. It was a lot. I identified as a leading firefighter. I drove trucks. I got to punch in doors. I got to be on the branch, first one in. That is what I wanted to do. And I kept getting tapped on the shoulder by those above me saying, you need to move up so you can help us move on and be better and create this learning environment. And I was like, but I want to be selfish. This is about me. This is my thing. And then I was thinking the other day after having a yarn with one of my good mates, Hawley, and it dawned on me when we were talking that this job's about sacrifice. Like, that's why you do this job, to serve, to sacrifice. And, like, I was sitting there saying, because he's like, oh, but you'll go change the fire brigade. You'll change how we do things. And I'm like, but the sick joke is, Hawley, I'll change it to what I wanted it to be like when I was a firefighter, and I'll never get that. I'll never get to fight a fire the way I wanted to fight it. And then it dawned on me that this job's all about sacrifice, and maybe it is my turn to give that up, but to make it better for anyone else who's coming on. And to make it the fire service I know it can be, and to keep pushing the ball forward and share learnings and do all that kind of stuff. And don't worry about what people think of me. Worry about if I'm doing the right thing for the job, which in turn is going to be the right thing for the community. So, yeah, you get further when you don't care who gets the credit, and you get further when you remember what this job's about. It's not about you. It's not about me. At the end of the day, we retire. Like, I'm 36, so I've got 24 years left. And then I'm going to walk out the door, and 2 weeks later, they're going to forget about me.
Yep.
So I care about it, and all I want to do is go, cool, it was better when I left it. How do I do that? I don't think about myself. I think about the service.
Yeah. You said you were going to leave it better than you found it.
Yeah.
You said you were going to make a difference. And understanding the chapter you're at in that life path, like discovering this for me is a huge thing. I think I'm not the best firefighter in the world. I think I'm not the best communicator in the world. I think I'm not the fittest person in the world. But I think those overlapping elements, and as you've recognized in yourself, you may be in the top 20-30% of firefighters, you might be in the top 20-30% of leaders, 20-30% of communicators, most definitely you are, if not the top 10%. Find where those things overlap. You're not best serving your community by solely being an individual leading firefighter with a small team of people. That is selfish. That is not sharing the best version of you that could reach the furthest and impact the most and influence change on a wider scale.
And I guess there, if I was to stay at that leading firefighter, do you reckon it is ever going to be the fire service I want? Or do you reckon I'm just going to sit there and be frustrated? It's never going to be the fire service I want. I've outgrown my circle of control or my circle of influence. My circle of interest is where I'm at. And that's probably a big thing. So like anyone out there listening to this who's frustrated with where you are, check your circle of control, your circle of interest, and your circle of influence. Now, if your circle of interest is too big and you're not getting where you want to go, you've got two options here. You either shrink it, so give up thinking about that stuff, or increase your circle of influence. And if that means that you have to give up something you love so you can affect something you love doing for yourself so you can affect better change for those around you, go do that.
Mate, that's the best thing to close on. I absolutely love that. Is there anything else you want us to circle back to? I think we've covered such a massive spectrum there, brother. And I'm just going to put some links in for people for them to reach out to you, because I know there'll be people screaming at the whatever they're listening on saying, oh, you didn't talk about this or you didn't ask him about that. So before we close it, mate, is there anything you want to circle back to or leave in the minds of the listener?
We could talk for another 5 hours, you know that.
I know we could. We will do. We'll come on again.
Yeah, look, I really enjoyed. I love talking about firefighting strategies, tactics, all that kind of stuff, and I'm really keen to share what we're doing in that space, because we're really making some moves in actually documenting some tactical decision-making tools, some strategic decision-making tools, some tactical guidelines. So here's some control measure tactics, and you can do them with heaps of stuff. That's going to take another 2 hours, so we'll do that at some other point. I've really enjoyed the opportunity just to sit here and talk about mindset, talk about culture, talk about some other things around the job that don't really get spoken about that much in our sphere of the world. Like, is our king too. So our fire service is very much like your fire service.
We gravitate to the operational because it's our comfort zone. We like talking about that stuff, but inherently that's not globally, and certainly in the UK, that's not the stuff we're struggling with. We're struggling with people having a sense of belonging. We're struggling with culture. We're struggling with supporting and encouraging a learning environment, helping people get in that learning zone, as we've spoken about. That's the bit we're actually struggling about. So I love the operations. I love the tactics. And we have some very fantastic guests, yourself included, who will go deep on that and lose me very quickly. But I like to zoom out a little bit. And I'm sure there's many, many, many nuggets that people will be able to take away from this and are actually, like we talk about with operational things, they're actually deployable. They're actually tactical. They can actually take them away and play this back and listen to that 4-minute segment at 78 minutes and go, that's the thing. That's the thing. That's where I'm at the moment. That helps me. I can see myself from what Gerard said, and I'm going to go away and I'm going to use that.
Yeah. Oh, mate, it's been great. And thanks so much. And it's good to see you. It's good to talk with you again.
The Firefighters Podcast was created to recognize, acknowledge, inspire, and hopefully even motivate these incredible individuals who have chosen to be part of the first responder community. Our driving purpose is to create a legacy resource for the current and future generations of firefighters and first responders. We get some incredible feedback from listeners and guests, and as the podcast grows, our desire to create longevity and sustainability means that we are asking for the support of our listeners. If you want to support the podcast, if you want to get discounts to our merchandise, hoodies, clothing, coins, patches, tallies, and also access to all of the incredible documents get shared with us from our podcast guests and sector leaders, then please head over to our Patreon page, and for just £3 a month you can support the future of the podcast. Please finally hit that follow, subscribe or rate button on the platform you're listening, and wherever you're in the world, please support your emergency services responders, and thank you for listening.